Another problem is technology. Corn yields went up by 3.7% between the 40s and the 70s. They've been going up by 1.6% since then. Basically, we need to feed ourselves. Fuel takes away some of the corn crop. Unless we can get a higher rate of technical progress, it's going to be hard to make these renewables and at the same time have cheap food prices. In the past, what happened is sort of a classical economic thing. If here we have a demand curve, here we have a supply curve, we keep pushing technology out and making supply cheaper, but at the same time demand grows. But what happens is if I make food half as expensive, are you going to eat a heck of a lot more? I mean, my daughter eats about this much stuff every day. Basically, our demand for food is relatively inelastic, we call it, that you're not going to eat a lot more or a lot less depending on the prices. And what happened is that the supply growth outstripped the demand growth, and that meant that the corn prices were going down over time. Like I said, they were $2 in 1970. They were the equivalent of 70 cents by 2000. But nowadays, we're pushing the demand growth out faster than the supply growth, so we're pushing these prices back up. And unless we can get back to this kind of situation, we're going to have a hard time doing that, or devoting an awful lot of resources to corn ethanol. Here I have technology questions. Can we really get to producing cellulosic or pyrolysis? Cost is a factor. I won't talk about biochar. So my comments are the price for biofuels is likely to stay up. The greenhouse gases can stimulate that production because they're generally more efficient than conventional fossil fuels. The greenhouse gas prices, if we start getting them, if we ever got cap and trade, it would move us toward biomass-fired electricity and toward this cellulosic ethanol. Leakage and indirect land use effects in Brazil and other places are a factor. Technology and cost are a factor. Technical change is a problem. And with that, I'll see if you have questions. I talked 45 minutes.
What do you mean by that last bullet?
Technical change. There's two issues in technology. Today, engineering calculations say we can get 100 gallons of ethanol from a ton of wood. Anybody know what we do get? We get somewhere between 60 and 70. So what we really need is to push that technology out to the point we can get somewhere close to its technical potential. And that 100 isn't a pie in the sky figure. I think the pie in the sky figure is you could get 130 or something like that, but 100 is what they think is realistically achievable. Today in the electricity business, do you know what, if you burn wood, do you know how efficient a power plant is? It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35% or something like that. You can recover about 35% of the potential BTUs. So what we really need is much more efficient ways of doing this that are lower cost ways too. The electrical power plants aren't all that costly to burn the wood, although slagging is a problem and so are some other things, but the conversion of wood into liquid fuels is still a pretty costly basis. So we need to do that. And then technical change in agriculture. Somebody I listened to one time said if we could just devote the whole state of Iowa to producing bioenergy, we could meet the energy needs of the country. Well, Iowa's our most productive state. If we took Iowa land away, we wouldn't have the most productive agriculture in the world. Our food prices would go way up. So there's a competition between food and fuel. And if you don't have rapid technological progress, if people grow at a faster rate than our ability to produce food, we're not going to be able to produce energy. So that's what I mean by those last two bullets.
Have you looked at the economics of co-firing biomass and coal?
Yes. That's the best of them. It turns out that if you go and try to burn a big pile of wood, it burns cooler than burning coal with wood on top of it, because the coal leads to more complete combustion, lower greenhouse gas, etc. But there's a major problem. You know where in Texas our agricultural acreage is? You know, where do we grow the crops? Anybody from Lubbock or Amarillo? My son's married to a woman from Amarillo, from up there. If I get in a car and drive to her parents' house, it's 502 miles. Where are the people in Texas?
In the cities.
They're in the Triangle: Houston, Dallas, San Antonio,
Austin.
yeah, Austin. All the people are there. Where are the power plants? They're in the Triangle too. So if you want to co-fire, what you got is you got to haul all this big bulky stuff 500 miles to the bloody power plants. You can get some of it burned out there because there's some of it out there, but transmission lines are a real problem. If you burn it for electricity, you lose a lot of the electricity in the transmission from there to here, and the energy's bulky. You can't put it in a pipeline if it's ethanol because it eats all the seals and leaks out. So there's some issues in terms of whether the land is where the people are with these bulky feedstocks.
Okay, this is kind of a hypothetical, I guess. Okay, so we just saw Mr. T-Boone Pickens speak the other day, and so we heard his great Pickens plan and
Natural gas.
yes, sir, and it was more for energy independence, more so than sustainability. But the implications of energy independence, excuse me, and like you alluded to, we need to get the gas prices higher for, I guess, change. Sum it up and change. What would be the 20 years from now if we implemented the Pickens plan, if we were energy independent? What does it look like 20 years from now after that?
Well, the Pickens plan has one.
It is
Oh,
with
that-
the screensaver.
The Pickens plan has one problem, and that is that you can run light-duty vehicles on natural gas, but you can't do trucks, apparently. So all the, half of our transport is probably these big trucks running up and down the interstate. Now, you could get more into rail, because that's a heck of a lot more efficient. And I don't think you can run rail on natural gas, but I don't know for sure about that. Remember, I'm an economist, not an engineer. Why do you think we use petroleum rather than natural gas today?
Cheaper to get out?
So the Pickens plan would probably make it more expensive. I mean, there's a reason why society does things, and usually it does things because it's cheaper to do that than to do something else. So just about all this stuff is going to make things more expensive, and it would make renewables. It would make a brighter future for renewables if you fully bought into the Pickens plan. The other thing that you can do is gasify this stuff. I mean, there's ways to take wood and convert it into gas as a natural gas form. Again, if you did go into natural gas, you would deplete those reservoirs faster, and you'd eventually hit a peak oil problem for peak natural gas, although I think that's substantially further out. I have heard people talk about peak coal production. I have never heard anybody talk about peak natural gas. So I think it would create a little brighter future for renewables, but basically we're going to have to do something. I mean, during your lifetime, I'm not sure we're going to be able to be as entirely dependent on petroleum as we are now, just because of this peak oil and because of the more expensive sources.
From your economic point of view, which is your opinion about shale gas and shale oil?
Well, this picture that I showed you is a picture from the from the International Energy Agency. And the International Energy Agency looks at the alternative cost of these different things, and that is shale oil,
No, that's not shale oil, that's different.
okay?
Yeah, for example, the Keystone Pipeline is producing oil shales from Canada to be refined here. Shale oil is other thing.
Good. Okay, so you tell me.
Well, I was concerned about the graphic because that doesn't include shale gas.
Well, that particular graphic is about liquid fuels. Is shale gas a liquid fuel?
It's like a tight rock where you can extract natural gas.
Are you talking about the fracking business?
Kind of.
I mean, part of the issue with the fracking business in a place like Texas is, can we afford all the water? But I don't want to talk about that right now. I mean, the basic bottom line is that there are a lot of new technological things we can do. Generally, they're probably going to cost a little more than what we're already doing. So it's still my basic argument that future energy costs are likely to be more expensive than current energy costs still holds, just because of the shift out in demand and using these more expensive sources. Although, who knows? I mean, the oil price has not really gone up that much over all these years. We just, as the prices get higher, innovation gets a little bit better. Most people in my business think the way to solve some of these problems is put a fairly high price on carbon and encourage people to innovate ways to have lower carbon incentive energy.
Talking about carbon incentive energy and carbon incentive policy plans, what do you think about other countries, worldwide talking, that instead of producing oil, they are asking for money to not produce oil and the so-called carbon stuff?
Yeah, well, we have something called the Clean Development Mechanism, where when Europe is carbon constrained, it can go to China or Brazil and pay them money to reduce their carbon emissions, and then they take credit for that. The problem is that our emissions have increased despite that going on, and global, we sort of need